Right now, we also have our LSU basketball Twitter poll up at OTB_ESPN. Kent Lowe was the original member of the committee. We subbed out a couple of calls to John Brady, and since then on Brady on Twitter, Brady has used me as his fallback punching bag. Anybody that gives any type of criticism to the field, Brady just says, "At Jordy Collada, shut me down on this one." Good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, I only speak the truth, baby. That's
That's right.
all. I was trying to. I don't need controversy in this time in my life, so I just said, "God, you're right. Jordy overruled me."
Coach, it is something, and it's always great to have these types of conversations with you, Kent Lowe, some of the great LSU basketball historians that have meant so much to the program. I think we know this in the listening audience, but you know this a little bit more if you want to go into it. LSU's got such a rich tradition of players. The program may have been inconsistent in its production throughout its existence, but it's always pumped out talent.
Well, one of your followers put together a starting five of the people that didn't make that list,
Right.
and that starting five right there could beat a lot of people. So you're exactly right. I think, especially, everybody knows the Pete Maravich, the Bob
Mm-hmm.
Pettits, but when Coach Brown came in the 25 years he came through there, he rolled out some really good players. And then in my 11 years spent there, we had at one time 7 guys in the NBA. So we had some good players come through. And then Johnny coached the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. So, traditionally LSU has had some good players. And then Will Wade, Nas Reed made a team, and Tremont Waters made a team. So, and with this recruiting class that you referenced, in the opening, it looks like they've got a couple more coming in. So the LSU, in terms of turning out players that can play at the next level, has been consistent over the last 40 years.
Yeah. There was a 4-year stretch where Coach Brady, in the middle of his tenure, had Brandon Bass, freshman of the year, Glenn Davis, freshman of the year, Brandon Bass, player of the year, Glenn Davis, player of the year for a 4-year stretch. Coach, you saw Trendon Watford his freshman season. Offensively, he's as skilled as anybody that's come through here in a while. When you give an evaluation of his play and what you saw in one season, what do you say?
I like him. I think how I gauge a player is what he does when he begins the season and how he ends the season, and certainly his improvement on both ends of the floor was significant. And I think later on in the year he got better defensively because he adapted to the physicality of the game. Now, the thing about him, some of the players that Coach Brown and I had, and even Johnny had, the explosive guys that jump 3 feet over the rim when you walk in the gym and you see a Shaquille O'Neal or Dwayne Scales or a Stromile Swift or Tyrus Thomas or
Dupree.
Ben Simmons jump 3 feet over the rim, you go, holy smokes. Well, he's not that type of player. He does have good athleticism, but he's more of a skill player who's very good at passing the ball. I think he makes good decisions in the open floor. He's a good enough three-point shooter, and I think that will improve. He got better as the year went on, going to the free throw line. If he wasn't the top rebounder on the LSU team, he was certainly close to being the top rebounder on the LSU team. So he does things that you say that you don't really notice until the stat sheet after the game. You look at it and go, holy smokes. So I think he's got an opportunity to be a professional player. If you ask me, I think it would enhance his draft status if he came back for another year. But sometimes now in making it to the NBA, there's a whole different set of circumstances and avenues in order to get there. Nas Reed wasn't drafted. He makes a team. So I think they're going to go through this process. And I'll say this about Trendon. I thought his attitude was good this year, and his parents are very involved, and his dad was there for all the road games at practice a lot and sat there. But, sometimes you think that's going to be a problem. But in my observation of being around his father and being around Trendon a lot this past season, I think his dad was very supportive. I think they have an open mind about what they want to do. I think they want to make the best decision for their son, and that's why they're taking the approach they're taking.
I think this is one of the good processes of the NBA and the NCAA in relation with each other to allow an underclassman to go get the information If he doesn't sign with an agent and he stays in school, he still has the opportunity to go back to classes and continue his education and continue to play. When you're advising players in a coach role, when you've been in this situation, when you've had an underclassman to just go test, what's the advice? I imagine that it's individual on the player, but just overall, what are you looking for them to get back in return?
Well, I think different players have different ways they want to do it. Sometimes they involve the coach a lot. Sometimes they don't want to do that because they think maybe the coach has a tilted view of what he wants the player to do at the end of the day. But this whole process is good for the players. I'm not sure how good it is for the coach. I mean, because he's got to hang on to a scholarship, wait and see what the young man's going to do. He may have to pass on a player that he would normally sign. So he's got to keep a scholarship open in case Trendon wants to come back. So I think it's good for the player. I'm not so good it's great for the coach. But when I went through this process, I think the coach is limited in what he can say publicly. You know, certainly Will Wade said the right things in his press release, and I'm not privy to what Will Wade really thinks. But in my experience there, you know, I had to support the player because I couldn't come out and say, I think he ought to come back to school. I don't think he's ready for the NBA. Then you can't recruit another one like that because they think you're holding him back and won't let him do what he needs to do in developing of himself and the best decisions for himself.
You've led a program in times of, I don't want to say terror, but just in times of panic. Hurricane Katrina, you guys, the season wasn't affected during that time, but your facility was, your preparation in the preseason was, and you had to manage a lot of emotions around the campus, the university, and your team. If you were to give Will Wade any advice during this time, you may have already, what would you tell him in running a program in such uncertain times?
Well, I think the communication with your players is the key, and just be close to them and see what they're thinking and know what's going on with them. And with the media today, where you can get people and see their on the phone and do all the things on the internet and all the things you can do now, I think it's important just to maintain a relationship with players. Communication is key. Talking about what you need to do, what they need to do. And I think that's how you handle it. What it is what it is. You don't make it any bigger. You don't make it any less. You understand the importance of it. Just like we were in Katrina, we knew where we were and what we needed to do, and we just had to stay in contact with one another, communicate with one another, and move forward because there was a season coming up, and we had to play the season. So I think communication and those type of things, open lines of communication, are really important getting through a situation like this.
Talking to LSU head coach, former LSU men's head coach, John Brady. You catch him on the LSU broadcast, Chris Blair, each and every game. Coach Brady coming up next segment. We are updating our OTB LSU Best Basketball Players bracket. And look, man, it's looking like the championship. We knew it from day one. It's coming down to Pete Maravich versus Shaquille O'Neal. Who you got, Pistol Pete or Shaq?
Well, I love Shaquille O'Neal, and I think he's probably the most recognizable player for LSU now because he's more present. But for my money and my growing up and my admiration and what I thought about Pete Maravich and the player he was, I've got to go with the pistol. That's just, to me, he's LSU basketball in a sense, and what he did in terms of breaking the scoring record and the publicity he brought to LSU. Can you imagine Pete Maravich doing the things today with the way the media is today and how much attention he would bring?
It'd be wild.
I've got to go with the pistol.
Do you remember the first time you saw him? Did you see him play in person?
Yeah, I was sitting in the Cow Palace when he broke the record against Ole Miss. When he broke the national scoring record against Ole Miss, I was there. And
what was it?
I told the story before. I had the 4-prong camera that had the flash bulbs, and I think Pete that night missed 4 in a row, maybe 5 in a row, and we tried to flash it every time he shot it. I didn't get the winning shot because we ran out of cubes on our little camera. But I was there the night he broke the national scoring record, and it was something to really witness. It's incredible.
Wow. Former LSU head basketball coach, now a part of the LSU Sports Radio Network and a great resource and friend to our show. Thank you, Coach. Stay healthy. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. All right, guys. See you.
Take it easy, Coach.